With the local government elections drawing nearer, there are the usual controversial misgivings from political parties and mounting discontent from citizens. This year proves to be no exception. So this is going to be one of those elections that proves to be a great test. Not only are there big questions about getting people out to vote, but how exactly will those votes go? Those are the questions that political parties will be, of course, weighing. Joining us tonight, the convener at Africa Brand Summit, Soli Moyeng. Tate Moyeng, good evening. Thank you so much for your time tonight. We're looking at a situation in the country now where the trust of the electorate in politicians and even in some institutions is at an all-time low. What does that mean for an election that is effectively going to take place in 7 weeks, and political parties really haven't had the time, at least in the way that they would previously, to try and convince people that they've actually been doing good for them?
Well, political parties have all the time to convince us through their delivery. The convincing doesn't have to be through poetry and dancing on stages alone. I mean, they occupy our newsrooms all the time. So I think now it's the turn for voters around the country to decide whether or not they want to keep the status quo wherever they are in their different communities, mindful, of course, what the issues are and where they live, or to change. It's really up to the voters. The political parties cannot complain that they didn't have time. We're watching them all the time. They're on in the news every time, on newspapers all the time.
You are a communications and brand expert. When you see residents, as we've been seeing on Newzroom Afrika throughout the day, who don't want to vote, who feel that their needs have simply not been met, especially not in the way that they would have expected, and there is this display, again, of the lack of trust, where does one even begin to rebuild it?
Yeah, well, that's very unfortunate. I think that people mustn't think that not voting, is the right way to go. I mean, of course, they have the right to not to vote, but I think that people must learn to vote for other people, vote away from the incumbent if you're not happy with the incumbent. That's a way to give him a kick in the butt, as it were. But to say that I'm not happy with you, therefore I'm going to sit at home, well, other people are going to vote. Whatever the outcome is going to be from the votes of other people will determine your future. Well, it will determine who becomes your councillor, your mayor, and all of that. So I think that people need to just go out there, vote, but vote away from their unhappiness, vote away from promise. Of course, they have to look at the manifestos. They have to look at the track records of those who have been around for a while. They have to make a decision based on whether they believe this person in front of them or this group of people in front of them will respond to their requirement, to their needs. And this is what they have to do every 5 years. I think now it seems like elections are like a big opportunity for festivals, for dances, for music, for drinking, for false promises. It has to move away from that to become an opportunity to performance manage and those people that we vote into power.
Of course, it is also a time where it could be quite easy for politicians, to dupe people, pull the wool over their ears in terms of the promises that are being made and what is being said on the election trail. But do you think that the messages of promise will resonate with South Africans, given where we are, not just the socio-economic conditions that we've been facing, but that have been exacerbated by COVID-19? Do we need something different for the people of South Africa this year?
I think what we need to be different is for people to read, to really exercise the power that they have in the vote. But we mustn't underestimate South Africans. In 2016 rather, we saw what happened to the ANC in Tshwane, in Pretoria, in Johannesburg, and in the Nelson Mandela Bay municipality. So South Africans do make a decision when they're really upset about stuff, and they vote away. So maybe they should do the same thing if they're not happy, of course, with the status quo. But it's important that voters realize that everything is not just about what the politicians say. Everything is about what they really want and whether or not they're going to take action, punitive or how to say, for action that says to people, we're happy with what you're doing.
Certainly, it's quite easy to talk about people needing to be rational, needing to read up and have a fair look and a critical look at what each party or even each candidate is offering. But again, as somebody who's an expert in brands, there's a lot more that goes into the thinking, especially where brand association is concerned. What are some of the feelings that we need to be aware of, that we could be making decisions from, that are just beyond perhaps what we believe may be rational?
Yeah, that's a very good question. Look, the only other time, for instance, when South Africa was not governed largely by the African National Congress, it was a really sad place to be for black people. Nobody can deny that. I think there's still a level of post-apartheid, post-traumatic trauma that people, post-traumatic syndrome that people are still going through. We haven't come to terms with the past. So it's very hard for many people to imagine a South Africa that's not governed by the ANC. They think if it's not the ANC, it's apartheid. And I know, I have met people who believe that if you remove the ANC, apartheid is going to come back. If you vote for the DA, apartheid is going to come back. So we need to get to a point where people recover from that, where people realize that the ANC or any other party, no political party is indispensable. If you're not happy with the party we have, you must remove them. There's no way that apartheid can come back to South Africa. No way. I mean, you have to undo all of those pieces of legislation that were put in place since 1994. And nobody has the appetite to do it. Nobody has the courage to do it. Nobody has the will to do it. I don't know any political party that wants to bring back apartheid. South Africans must realize that they cannot just rely on what the promises are like from the political parties. Well, the political parties are designed to do that. They will dance with you. They will make parties. They will give you, food parcels. They will give you money to buy food for the evening. But the fact is, you have to decide: is this person fooling me? If you're in an abusive relationship and the person keeps hitting you and they keep bringing you presents, I'm sorry, you can't keep staying there because after hitting you, they bring you presents. You need to say, you know what, I can't take this anymore. And when South Africans keep voting for the same people over and over again and expecting different outcomes, it's a sign of madness.
One of the things that we're likely to hear, especially post this election, are going to be big questions around funding. Already the conversation has started, but more and more you're beginning to hear politicians talk about the difficulties of campaigning with limited budgets and pointing really to the Political Funding Act that has now come into play. You started off by saying that politicians effectively have the entire year to convince South Africans that they have their best interests at heart. But does it matter that one is not able to print as many, posters as you would want, hold as many events that you would want, print out as many T-shirts that you would want?
Of course that matters. I mean, as a brand specialist, you do need to, in order to grow the visibility of your brand, the footprint of your brand, you need all of that stuff. You need to be able to print posters, you need to distribute T-shirts and on as many billboards as you can. Of course you want, but the question is, at what point is it enough? At what point is it really not enough? Of course, there's never going to come a time where somebody says, "Oh, no, you know what? It's enough. I have enough." Look at how much money they spend on electioneering in America. It can go on and on forever. But I think that parties have to find ways to use owned media platforms. I mean, we have, social media platforms can be utilized, but they also have to rely on their delivery. When people are happy, they will vote for you. I mean, look at the service delivery protests that we have around the country. Political parties can't blame it on we didn't have enough time or we don't have enough issues. I'm not saying those things are not important. Of course they are important, but they're not sufficient reasons for them to say, oh, if they lose, we've lost because we didn't have enough money. Well, for the new ones, that would be the case because obviously they still need a lot more resources to spread their footprint around the country. But parties like the ANC, the EFF cannot complain that they don't have enough money. Therefore, they would put the blame on that if they don't do well in elections.
Solly Moyeng, the convener at Africa Brand Summit, thank you so much for your time tonight.